Folks, when you look at this right here, then you can only think of three things, I'm sure. That is, that this is the country with the best people, the best countryside, and of course the best food. We are talking about Spain, we are talking about the Iberian Peninsula in general, and of course, yes, we are talking about Victoria 3. We are back here in Victoria 3 on the channel with just some actual gameplay. I haven't done it in quite some time, and I'm incredibly excited to get back to it because, oh my god, the open beta is on fire. Now, the next update is coming next week. Until then, I want to finish this playthrough. And for the record, by the way, if you're thinking, hey, where's the Greece playthrough? Let's forget about that. We don't talk about that anymore. We're going to jump into this here today, and we're going to explore what is new in the beta. If you haven't played it, I will explain a couple of the mechanics, and of course, as we do, roleplay. I will take options that may not be optimal, but that are fun and that make a lot of sense. And today we're going to jump into Spain and push it as far as we can, by which I mean until I get bored by the performance in the late game. Now, a thing that you probably already noticed is the fact that it is night. And I'm going to tell you this outright, I only play at night when it comes to the in-game day and night cycle. I don't even do the actual cycle, I just do the night because, I mean, my god, just look at this. Look at beautiful London. Honestly, there are two cities that I really like. I like St. Petersburg a lot during the day because there's like this fog going on here. During the night, hey, there's not that much going on here. But London during the night, now that is an absolute beauty. We're going to play with this. You're going to see a whole lot of this because it is just that gorgeous. And of course, I will try to build a city that looks better than London itself, but well, honestly, even Paris, it just looks so gorgeous. Alright, I can't get caught up in this. I could just look at this map for hours. But anyway, what we are going to do today is explore what is happening in Victoria 3's open beta through the eyes, of course, of Spain. We're going to hopefully re-erect the Empire, or maybe the Republic, depending on how it goes. There is a lot new content, not Spain-specific, but, you know, when it comes to how the economy functions, how, for example, some journal entries function, such as communism. Communism has received an overhaul there that I would love to explore at least a little bit. And, of course, we're going to take a look at what is in this beta patch when it comes to the army and so on. Obviously, the next beta patch will change a whole bunch of things around there as well. For example, right now there is nothing going on when it comes to upgrades. You have to dissolve the old troops and then rebuild the new ones. But I think we will cross that bridge when we come to it. For the moment, let's just analyze where we are with Spain. We are ruled by Isabel de Bourbon and everybody hates her, which I find really funny. Everybody hates her because she's a child. They're like, ah, this stupid brat. I can't believe she rules the nation. Now, obviously, she is a part of the intelligentsia, and historically speaking, there was a lot of conflict going on here between Carlist forces and more progressive forces. We don't have the Carlist wars, but I'm definitely going to play into this. She is a child, nobody really likes her. I think we're going to have a bit more of a conservative government. There you go, yes indeed. The intelligentsia will be in the minority here and out of government. We have a slave landowner with Julio de Lorach, which is definitely how you pronounce that, by the way. Then we have Victor Saez, and we have General Ramon Maria Narvaez. If you're Spanish, or if you have any knowledge about any of these characters, please tell me about them, because I have very little to none. Oh yeah, if you were wondering, by the way, we are playing with the Victoria Tweaks mod. It is linked in the description as well. There is a version for 1.5, and a bunch of things are different from Vanilla's open beta, so make sure to check that out for sure. Now, speaking of this though, let's become evil. You know I gotta pass it, right? If we have a chance, we still have an underage monarch, then I gotta go hard on the slave trade. We gotta go really, really hard into the evil direction because, well, the landowners are incredibly powerful as it stands. And the queen is a hated child. I mean, come on. Why don't you abdicate, you little nerd? Now tech-wise, not much has changed here. Obviously, we don't really care for nationalism. Other countries really care for it. I do like egalitarianism entirely because it allows us to go for the Springtime of the People's journal entry, and I love that journal entry. So let's explore this, but then immediately afterwards, I think everything that we want to do is technology on the production level. We want to be better when it comes to the economy, and that's really all we can and want to do here. Now, outside of this, I will tell you right now that even in the open beta, going very hard on a lot of taxes and making it so that you have a lot of income that you can invest in the economy is still the way to go. It's not like, you know, this changes all of a sudden. You want all of the money that you can get because, well, the investment pool hasn't really kickstarted yet, and you are the driving force of the economy, which of course means we're going to tax the living hell out of our people, but different from previous versions. What this also means is quite simply that your population will be poorer. See, in previous versions of Victoria 3, having, for example, just full employment going on in one of your locations in any of your states would make it so that that state would bit by bit get really high wages, which means everybody becomes really rich, and that is it. That means that before this open beta, you could go, have really high taxes, build it up like crazy, and then naturally get a very, very wealthy population. That is no longer the case. This wage spiral that previously existed once you reach zero in unemployment and as peasants no longer actually occurs. I love this. This is one of the overlooked changes here, at least in my mind, when it comes to the open beta 1.5. There's so much that stems now from this, because it means that I have high taxes, but at some point I have to bring them lower. If I don't, we will see absolute poverty for the rest of the game. And on top of that, the minimum wage and the wage subsidies are all of a sudden worth their weight in gold. So yeah, hey, that changed. Keep that in mind if you were to play the open beta, especially with Victoria Tweaks mod, because hey, people will be starving and that will make them incredibly mad. But all of that theory aside, the bigger thing, of course, and these are the initial decisions that we need to make here, especially as Spain, is related to our economy. And when it comes to the economy, a lot has changed. Mostly because of this, local prices. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, if you have never seen these local prices, if you didn't read any of the dev diaries, if you have no idea what is going on here, this is not intuitive. You will look at this and you will say to yourself, oh my god, this is overwhelming, I'm quitting the game, I'm out of here. And I get that. But let me tell you two things here right away that we will consider as Spain in particular. First of all, the very old gameplay loop where you basically just build up whatever you need to have construction sectors running, that is still valid. You're still purchasing those things, so building it up makes a lot of sense. But we're now looking at a situation where you want to build this as a local supply chain if possible. So for example, right here, the iron frame buildings require tools, fabrics, wood, and iron. If we can create these things in one state and have the construction sector that uses them in that state as well, we will ultimately pay less and have a better economy. The reason for this is, well, as mentioned, the local prices. If we take a look at this, for example, let's say wood, you can see that local prices differ depending on where you are on the market. Now, previously, this would only be the case if you had a lack of market access, but you can see right here that is not the case. Capital technically is disconnected slightly, but don't worry about it. Market infrastructure and connection still matters, but you will still have market prices being impacted by local circumstances. This is called the market access price impact. And in VTM, this impact is harsher than in vanilla, but the impact exists one way or another. The way this now works is that every state for any good has a local supply and demand chain and has a market supply and demand chain. This then gets multiplied. You can see it right here. Currently, 60% of the market price are being evaluated by default by our local price, and then the rest is local price. That is how it gets basically added together. You can see right here in VTM we have the base value of 60%, which means the market price doesn't have that much of an effect. Well, you know, the local price matters a whole lot more. In vanilla, it's 75% by default, which is still something to consider for sure. This means that the earlier you are and the lower your techs are, because this, so the impact of the market price will go up as you get more tech, the more will local supply chains matter. Previously, you may have built entirely just randomly because wherever you build doesn't really matter, everybody buys at the same market price. That is no longer the case. Having a production of wood, of tools, of iron and so on in one state makes all of these goods cheaper in that state, even if the market price were to be a whole lot higher. You can see this in general. You can see, for example, right here, the price of wood in the Spanish market is 28.6, but if you are in Navarra, you will be paying a different price. You will be paying 20.4. The reason for this is that we have a different distribution of production versus consumption when it comes to the particular province of Navarra. Now this means that, again, especially early on, we want to specialize. And this is the big thing. I think you really need to understand this when it comes to this new patch of Victoria 3. Everything that the devs have been working on in this open beta is aimed at getting you to specialize, because the more you specialize, the more will you be trading, and the more you're trading, the more this game keeps staying interesting, even in the late game, where you would then be looking around and saying, hey, maybe I have to trade for this or that good because it is just a competitive advantage. Previously, without what we call the MAPI, so the MAPI, we wouldn't really have a competitive edge, but now we do. So what this means is pretty straightforward. I want to build up an industry that can, of course, supply more construction sectors. That is the basic evaluation that we always do in this game. We're going to do this by looking for a province that has everything. I like that Navarra has coal. I like that they have iron mines. I love that they have logging camps, of course, as well. Castile, actually, also, by the way, a really good candidate for a very early construction sector boom. And then we will build these things in one particular location. Right now, I'm going to focus on logging camps because that is the method that we're currently using. I'm going to build this up here and there. Navarra is actually better now that I think about it because we can build ports even if we don't know what railways are, which we don't, by the way. We have no idea about that technology. We're going to build this up right here. Then we're going to pump in a couple of iron mines and, of course, go towards tooling workshops as well. Now, if we may, I would actually really... no cotton plantation. That breaks my heart. I would have really liked to go with that because, well, that would have been incredibly useful for the building, for the construction sectors right there. Instead, we're just going to pump up these numbers right here in Catalonia. They can have cotton plantations. It will be fine. And then, as always, we are going to build a couple more construction sectors, mainly focused in Navarra, because that is where we are building this entire industry that demands the construction goods. Right, that is a lot of theory. Don't get me wrong here, I completely get this. But all it means is that the earlier you are in the game, the less good your tech is, the more do you want to build centralized in one particular location. Later on, the market price impact will be heavier and heavier and heavier, but until then, yeah, this is basically how you build. Now, let me just double check here. How are we doing in terms of companies? We got nothing for the time being, so let's just ignore this. That's completely fine. We are constructing, we are doing slave trading, and we're going conservative, or, well, in this case, reactionary, until she grows up. Once Isabel grows up, I will attempt to basically roll back a couple of these ideas, these funky ideas that I land on herself, because, well, she is a moderate but intelligentsia-driven queen, and obviously we want to roll back a couple of these things, so... now, when it comes to allies, Two Sicilies is improving relations, but honestly, I mean, this should belong to us, right? I mean, Aragon and all that, doesn't that ring a bell with anybody? I would like to be friends with both Britain and France, because they're both very powerful. Long-term, of course, I want Gibraltar back, but for the time being, that doesn't seem very likely. Oh, look at that ship being generated right there. Man, I just seriously love the way this map looks when it's dark. And Portugal, I would also like to be a friend. They owe us an obligation, and we could get an alliance here. But I would rather, I think, have that obligation and call them into a war, should that become necessary. Morocco would be a good target here, but whatever. Alright, now it is important to keep an eye on the local prices because, again, that is what actually drives the consumption and the production of our buildings, because every building except the trade posts, they trade at the market value, but every other building basically trades at their local capacity and at their local price, which means we want to keep those, of course, you know, very different, or whatever we can do with them anyway. For example, when I look at this again, we see a difference right here, which is beneficial for us, but if there is a market-wide shortage, that will mean that this building right here will also be impacted, which means we want to produce more wood for sure. I'm actually going to go ahead and impact some fabric for the time being. Long term, we're obviously going to roll that back, and oh my god, right! Because of the Philippines that are in our possession, the Qing market is accessible to us. I will absolutely trade with the Great Qing. Oh my god, that is great. Can I export anything to them? Ooh, can I do that? I mean, okay, they will buy a couple. I'm going to create that route just so that we have some more trade going with them. It's a very important thing that you actually get some trade routes going so that they get trade agreements with you. The ultimate value here is the volume that we generate across all trade routes with one other country. So that is definitely a big thing right there. And then past that, I do think we're going to become a massive sugar producer. And there you go, the British market, it is. Now, I do want to clarify one thing in this video where we are apparently mostly talking about the local price and how that works. If you are scared away by this, don't be scared away by this. If you have no idea how to properly read the tables or the maps of the local price, don't worry about it. This right here will still tell you where you should buy things. I would largely focus on productivity. Focusing on earnings is also completely fine. It's mostly synonymous anyway, and I'm pretty sure this is wrongly sorted, isn't it? Oh, no. I think this is already taking into account these ones that we're building here. My point ultimately being, even if you don't know what your supply chains look like and where you should be building, just sort it by earnings and put some stuff down. It will be completely fine, and you will be fine as well. And you know what? While I am an absolutely horrendously reactionary country here, let's take a look at our vassals. We got Cuba, and of course we have the Philippines. We got a couple of other holdings right down here in Africa, and then of course over here in Morocco. But there's a really cool new shift that has entered the sphere of existence just, in the open beta, and that is the fact that we can now tell our vassals to change their laws. Now, it's not instantaneous, obviously, but it is something that can be beneficial. And I'll be honest with you, I don't want Cuba to really do anything except build farms. So I'm going to tell them, hey, please try to introduce agrarianism. They already have slave trade, which we will also soon have, so hey, welcome to the gang. But now they will try to introduce agrarianism. You can track it right here. The interface is not great, but this means that they will focus on agrarian buildings going forward, and that, of course, reactionary forces in Cuba will play a much, much bigger role because, well, hey, everything in favor of the aristocracy, right? And there is the Victoria Tweaks mod AI for France. Yeah, I wrote that, by the way, and they are currently attacking Constantine. Yep, they're gonna eat them. They're gonna kill them, absolutely massacre them. Normally AI France really grabs Algeria here very, very quickly, which of course means that we can't really get involved to begin with. But honestly, I might act aggressively against Morocco very early on. We could try to make them a protectorate, but alternatively, let me just ask this. Okay, so they don't really want to go ahead and just accept this. I would like to claim the entirety of Al Rif. 8.6 infamy, doesn't sound too bad. We have a pretty decent army. We have a direct port right here. And I hope that nobody would go to help them. It looks good to me. Nobody except Austria wants to protect them. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say I want Al Rif. It is not the best state, but it should lock me in as basically, well, the future of Morocco no matter what. I'm going to go ahead and demand this. Alright, so the good news is that they are currently fearful. I think I'm going to go ahead and just add making them a protectorate. We stay under 25 infamy. You can't currently, or ever, anymore make people immediate puppets or dominions, primarily because, of course, you want to slow down the annexation spiral there that was previously possible in Victoria 3, but you start by making them a protectorate and then can decrease their autonomy. So I'm going to start that right away. I think, hey, if you just want to back down, give me Al Rif, that is completely fine. If you don't want to do it, I will make you a protectorate. So that seems like a deal to me. Yeah, I'm not going to lock this in as primary so that they have something to back out of. Alright, since we're already here, and this is a bit of an explanatory playthrough anyway, well, because there are going to be a lot more once 1.5's next update comes out next week, let's take a look at warfare as well. You already now understand how to build up a local economy, why the local price matters, because, well, everybody purchases at their local price, which means that you want to concentrate industries at the very least at the start. Now, when it comes to warfare, a whole bunch of things have already changed, but be aware that a lot of the functionalities are locked behind next week's upcoming update. For example, right here we got line infantry. They are going to do, whatever they need to do against the Moroccans. And just for the record, currently attrition is much higher than it ought to be, but let's ignore all of this. It's going to be fine, okay? The point here is that military now works slightly differently. I say slightly because please don't mistake this as a way to, basically going back to stack-based warfare. That is just not happening, and I mention this every time because I don't want people to build up hopes if that is what they want and then be disappointed, because that is exactly what would happen. We now have military formations that contain several generals. These generals have each their own particular task. In this case, they're all attacking. In the next week, we're going to see, I think, together with naval missions, about 10 different tasks. So, for example, at least that is what the devs are saying, these generals will have something like reckless assault, that sort of stuff. In general, all this means is that we are looking at commanders that are either attacking or defending. There's no standby anymore, because standby means that I tell the formation to just no longer be at the front line, which makes perfect sense. As it stands, you travel to this front line and then are supplied to that front line. These are our units. Currently, there isn't really a difference between having hussars, cannon artillery, or line infantry, and so on and so forth. It doesn't really matter. Just build whatever you can, and then once you get skirmish, indeed upgrade to skirmish infantry, by which I mean you need to get rid of all of these and actually put skirmish infantry newly trained into this particular formation. Now again, doesn't really concern us right now. All that concerns us is that we bring them to this front line, and then you can see it right here. We get dioramas. This is one diorama, this is the enemy's diorama, and obviously we will be victorious. Currently, this is not fully animated. The horse is actually moving. I never even saw that until now, but there you are. And then we're going to start proceeding forward. The more battles we win, the more will we claim of this location. Previously, tiles would be flipped right away. Right now, the front line stays where it is until an entire state flips. This means once we conquer 100% of Al Rif, we will actually be getting the front line to move. After that, we keep attacking into other territory and so on. So that is how it works, and yeah, you can see that if they don't give up, we will see all of that actually play out. They didn't give up. Wow, I am surprised. Normally, having an additional demand that isn't primary will make the AI fairly likely to back off, but I guess not. And what now happens is we will win these battles as we go and as we proceed. Wait a minute. Abd al-Rahman al-Alawi. Isn't that the same dynasty as the Egyptians? But the Egyptians aren't the Egyptians Albanians? Huh. Interesting. I've never seen that. Well, anyway, you can see now we are claiming territory here in Al Rif, and the Filipinos have flown in their army as well. That is so funny. You can see the counter here is a bit broken, but don't worry about it. We're going to win again and again and again, which means that we are getting more and more territory here in Al Rif. And as soon as we have 100%, the front line will move, and, well, we are indeed looking then at a victory. As it stands right now, you can see that they will definitely not recover the manpower that they have in this army, which means this will be a pretty clear victory. There you go. We have already pushed further, and then, of course, now battle after battle after battle will be easier since, yeah, they're in a pretty bad spot. We're also going to go ahead and actually change this to iron frame building. I suspect, yep, that we're going to see a bit of a shortage here in iron, but that should be fine. Let me actually check the wood, right? The local price, yep, this is where the construction sectors are, or at least most of our construction sectors. We are not overpaying here at all, and that is a really, really big deal. I think for the time being, we might even want to move all of our construction sectors into Navarra, just because we are centralizing everything that we need for them, well, right there. Obviously, this does mean that the state construction efficiency is also restricted to Navarra, but we are basically paying less. There's a lot of math involved here that I would have to do myself. I would just currently suggest that building up very locally makes a lot of sense, even with your construction sectors, and even if this makes it so that you're not really getting the state construction efficiency where you're actually building. And there you go, we have already proceeded. We have claimed Fez, the actual capital of the Moroccans, and with that it's over. Just one heads up here, I think that is important. Even if you hold only 1% of your war goal state, so for example, let's say Fez is the war goal state, if we hold just 1%, so it's not flipping to us, it's just in 1% of our possession, this will count for ticking war score. Very, very important. Ticking war score, still a nuisance, still pretty annoying, but keep that in mind to really understand it. It doesn't really matter. We are now in a position where Morocco is our vassal, well, our protectorate, and we have taken over all of Al Rif. The Spanish industry is already emerging. Oh, and this is the funniest thing. Normally, the popular playwright endorses reform event is something that you get when you do, for example, some, progressive stuff. Yeah, this playwright is unironically endorsing slave trade. That is, interesting. A very, very interesting man. I'm going to take the permanent plus 20 prestige. It is great if you're a middling power, which we currently are. So yeah, definitely going to take that. And on the other side of the coin, what is actually going on with the Philippines? So they are also a colonial administration. They also got slave trade right here. I could, honestly, we're going to change them to agrarianism as well. I want, because we are currently being reactionary, I want the reactionary forces embedded in my colonies as well, for sure, at least for the time being. Again, do remember, stupid Isabel is a mere 6 years old, and everybody already hates her. I mean, it is what it is. Now, there is something else that I also want to discuss at the very least fairly shortly, because it isn't actually in this version yet. I have taken a look at pop growth so often and for such a long time, even before 1.5. If you have ever played with the Victoria Tweaks mod, then you will know this, because we use our very own numbers, our very own formula almost, when it comes to that. Now, in 1.5, a lot of things change for pop growth, and pop growth really excels once standard of living goes up, which in my opinion isn't directly something that really benefits the game, because pop growth is coming in very late. Now, something that has been a thorn in my side the entire time is the fact that healthcare, and you can see it right here, by virtue of primarily being negative for mortality, is something that really heavily pumps up your pop growth, because pop growth, basically is of course the birth rate and then the mortality, and then the difference, that is what you get on top of it. Now, I will tell you right now that the changes coming in the upcoming update 2 for 1.5 next week, which will not be in the Spain game, but in the afterwards following roleplay game, whatever that might be, are really cool. We're actually getting pollution. Right now, pollution is also a tracked value. The more industry you have, the more will you see, we don't really have anything here right now, but the more will you see these puddles of spilled oil and so on. That will now actually have an impact that is negative on standard of living and on mortality. And what counteracts it is, first of all, being cleaner, stop being such a slob, and second of all, you guessed it, health insurance. Making it so that health insurance gets a different value from simply pumping up your pop growth numbers, and now more being a factor that mitigates the effects of pollution. I'm crazy excited for this. The 1.5 changes, check out the video that I released yesterday on this topic, are so damn good, and that will be one of them. For the time being though, we're just gonna live with what is going on right here. I don't really care for this. It's fine, doesn't really harm us. I love the church, so there you go. Obviously, we gotta bring this up right here to give the landowners more power, and most importantly, make it so that turmoil doesn't really matter for us. And there you have it. Reactionary order restored, I would say. And you know what? Let's expand on this. Actually, let's go right here towards colonial exploitation. Who's in favor of this? The armed forces and the industrialists. Sure. Hey, we got the armed forces in our government, and Ramon Maria Narvaez is leading the charge here. Let me guess. This guy was on the side of the Carlists? Maybe? You tell me in the comments, yeah? I have absolutely no clue. Quite frankly, I have no idea about Spanish history until 1936. You can guess why. And this is actually a really interesting side effect that I didn't really consider. Previously, this event literally means nothing, and it still doesn't really mean all too much, don't get me wrong here. But it's interesting. A mining accident in Navarra making, for example right here, 5% of the lower strata pop in Navarra more hostile actually now means something to me, because, well, if you look at this, since we are basically concentrating everything when it comes to our industry, to our construction industry at the very least in Navarra, that means 16% of the GDP could be impacted here. There's a lot going on there when it comes to turmoil, when it comes to birth rates, when it comes to migration patterns that is now a bit more impacted since we're actually concentrating. Previously, I would never concentrate industries in just one state, but getting this event, now that I'm doing this, actually means something. That is an interesting implication. I gotta tell you, UI-wise, local prices are very cumbersome. Even if we just take a look at, for example, our construction sectors, right? Let's take a look at Navarra right here. To really understand that this price is as high because of our local consumption can be difficult unless you fully understand how local prices work. But the way they work, I think, will have really good downstream effects on virtually everything. Even in this case where, well, this radicalism for the lower strata will actually mean something for us. But quite frankly, we're not really... Actually, I hate the rural folk more than I hate the the industrialists, I guess. So let's go with them. We are still, I promise you, reactionary, okay? We just hate the trade unions and the rural folk more than we hate the industrialists, the nouveau riche. It is what it is. After all this time, I still cannot believe just how much I hate this menu right here. It is so detestable. It's so stupid. Seriously, I hate it. But there are some good news actually coming here, and that is that in the open beta 1.5, even right now, you can actually go to a different person's market, like for example right here, and then trade from their market. Let's get an import round to the Spanish market from the French market. Previously, you couldn't do this. These buttons would be grayed out, but now you can very easily look for, market targets, for example, and just do it in this UI. The UI is catching up. It's taking them some time, but it is catching up. Oh, and look who is going to war right here. The Ottomans against the Egyptians. Now, the Egyptians aren't getting any help here, but the question does remain whether the Ottomans can actually pull this off. I'll keep an eye on this, because obviously I want some colonies and maybe some islands over here long-term as well myself. And we are now at 99% success chance for colonial exploitation, so it really is just a question of time. What did I say? There it is. This now means that we can actually go on and establish a couple of colonies here. I'm definitely going to continue developing our colony right here. Quite frankly, I'm going to spam colonies for the time being. I hope long-term this won't be something that, you can keep doing, but right now, hey, nothing wrong with this, and we already do have a port here anyway, so definitely very beneficial. It's all already connected. I just need to build a port right there. Beautiful. But while we're at it, let's finish this video off right here. We only made it 4 years in. I promise you that tomorrow we're going to do a whole bunch more years because, well, especially early on, of course, the game runs better and there's not that much to do if you're not explaining how things work. Let's take a look at our actual construction sectors. Again, in Navarra, I have built up the local industries to support iron, tools, cloth, of course, as well, although not directly, and wood. We've done this so that we can have most of our construction sectors right there so that the actual cost that is coming from them is diminished. If we look at these prices right here, again, these are all the local consumption prices, and then compare them to, for example, Catalonia, that does not have a native industry in tools and wood, you will notice that when it comes to the, calculation per actual construction point, we are faring way, way better right over here. Primarily because, well, as you can see, these prices are just lower that we're actually paying for our construction points, making it so that at the very least early on, you really want to specialize production. You want to see about building mostly, I would argue, and this is of course with VTM, in locations that have actual, look at this impact, that have actual cargo ports going, so inland territory is worse off, which makes a lot of sense. You want to look for natural traits and you want to basically just concentrate, which also then in turn, of course, means that you want to be concentrating your educated, your qualified population, although previously, and even now, this didn't really mean all that much. But the playstyle here, the way that you organize these things will definitely create bigger distribution distortions when it comes to the actual political clout and the pop types that are hanging about. Let's take a look at this actually. I would like to evaluate this. So the landowners are not at all strong in Navarra. I mean, how could they? We didn't really build them up anywhere even close to Navarra. Let me take a look at the industrialists. That is what I want to see. I love this. We now have an epicenter of industrialist power in Navarra just because of the way that local prices make me play the game. If you recall the Persia game, then you will recognize that back then I micro-production methods so that I could get a distribution that had petite bourgeoisie, that had industrialists, just basically a regional distribution that is interesting. But I had to force myself to play that way. It's not encouraged, it's not meant to be played that way. It was just something that I was doing because I wanted to see how it goes. Now, because of local prices, you can see it naturally arise right here in Navarra. I want a cheaper supply chain, which means I specialize exactly where we are, and boom, if we had a rebellion driven by the industrialists, that rebellion would have its epicenter, without a doubt, in Navarra. Let me evaluate this here as well. I wonder what's going on in Valencia. Oh, it's the trade centers and it's the government administrations, of course. The rural folk, mostly in Valencia as well, because that is exactly where we have all these farms. We built this up quite a bit as well. Oh, that is so interesting. I'm going to continue focusing on this and trying to basically benefit off of supply chains that are motivated by the local price for as long as we still have this heavier local price impact. Again, with VTM, the impact is much, much heavier early on than it is in vanilla, but I love that. This really pushes you to specialize, and it makes it worth your while because, our construction sector points generated in Navarra are simply cheaper than if we generated it anywhere else in the country. I love this, and I'm really looking forward to coming back to Spain tomorrow. Tell me about the history of Spain, and most importantly, tell me what the first projects of our queen should be once she grows up. It's only 9 years to go, then she's 18. We'll try to take over the governance of the country, and we'll see where we go from there. I will leave you right here, and I will see you later. Alligator.